All right, and we are back. We are back, and we are excited. We are excited. This is another edition, really, of the We Think It's a Sports Show. But this is our conversation series, our Blacklist series, and we are really excited. I don't know if you can see it. You may or may not can see it. There is a resemblance here. There is a resemblance here. But we have the really listen, and we have it's not a joke because this actually happened, but we joke with our firm Rad about it. Internally, we have the man of the year here. We have the man of the year here. We have the man of the year. He was the man of the year here in Buffalo. It was on public access. I seen it. We all seen it, and none other than brother Sam Radford, and Rad is having a little technical difficulty, so I'll introduce him. That's Rad, all-purpose Rad. He'd do it all. Can you hear us now? He can.
Yeah,
Okay, he can hear us now. He can hear us now. And we have brother Sam Radford. How you doing, sir?
It was a good day to be alive, Sam. I ain't got no complaints, brother. It's all good here.
Wonderful, wonderful. I told Rad.
How you
Yes, sir.
how you doing, my brother?
I'm doing good. I can't complain. We was trying to get on, Rad Brother Box. He's trying to get the technical difficulties going, but we're here. And I told Rad that I had I was gonna come in. I had a little introduction that I wanted to do, and this is a huge shout out because this happened. Had to be in 2006. Yeah,
oh
2006.
man,
2006. Long time ago. Me and my guy, Aaron Radford. I can't think of the month or the day, but we had the Hutch Tech.
January.
It was in January. It had to be in January. We had the Hutch Tech entrance exam. It was seventh grade. Had to have been seventh grade, I believe, right? Or eighth grade?
I think so. Seven.
Yeah,
It got to be
one of
seven.
those. One of those.
I don't
Long,
know.
long
Something.
time ago.
Yeah.
Hutch Tech entrance exam, and we had to get there. This was literally the last day. The
I know.
last day. And I honestly don't know what happened. I mean, as far as like,
I know.
I'm trying to think of my situation. I don't know why my parents did not take me, or I didn't have transportation. Rat was trying to figure out. I mean, it was down to the wire, and Rat called, of course, the man of the year, his father, and he came through, like
He
came
did.
through,
Came
picked us
through.
up, picked us up in a. I remember it was a light blue minivan. Was it a light blue minivan? It was a light blue minivan. I remember like it was yesterday. And truly, I'm gonna keep it a stack. I'm gonna give y'all the whole story. We got to Suffolk on the expressway. I kid you not. The car shut off. Right? You remember that?
I remember it was
The
like
car.
it was like not try, everything was trying us to not get to Hutch Tech for some reason. It was like, what is
Everything.
going on?
Literally
Oh,
everything.
yeah, and so that time was back. It was at school with Olmsted now. It was at
Oh,
Old Kensington. It
Kensington.
wasn't
It was
that
at Kinston. It
Yep.
was at Kinston. Yep.
Yes, it was at
Exactly.
Kensington. We got to Suffolk, and soon we didn't even get over, but we got there, and the rest is history. Like
The rest is
the rest
history. And now we're here, and this is it.
Now
Like,
we
what we
here.
doing?
From that point.
literally changed futures that day. Because if y'all wouldn't have went to Hutch Tech, it said y'all
No,
would.
yeah.
This would have,
Yes.
we would not have got that. This would have never happened. We wouldn't have met Mike, wouldn't have met Mills, like this whole thing. So that
Yeah.
day, like I always keep that near and dear to my heart. It was pivotal, really, for us. It was like because it
Yeah.
wouldn't have happened. And so,
Well, to God be the glory. You know, right on.
absolutely. So I wanted to kind of go in on that point because we know the movement, we the parents, is so near and dear to your heart. And I want you, if you can just give a little bit of background on yourself. And I just wanted to give that story to show people that it's not talk, right? It is not talk. That is real. That was a real life story that he took the time out and took not only his son, but his son's friend for the Hutch Tech entrance exam. So can you give a little bit of background on yourself and just like the movement of We the Parents and what that means to the education system?
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I'm born and raised in Buffalo, New York. I'm a Hutch Tech grad as well. You know what I'm saying?
So, shout out to
went,
engineers.
Absolutely.
went twice, one in '83. Uh, I was in the Marine Corps. I went to the Marine Corps, came back from the Marine Corps, and I've been an active parent in Buffalo Public Schools since then, since 1990 when I got back from the United States Marine Corps. And just to really make a long story short, I've been active as a parent on every level. I went from being active as a parent leader in Head Start to being active as a school, a parent teacher organization president. Then I became a district parent coordinating council president. Then the governor appointed me on the education task force, and then President Obama appointed me on the national level to the Education Leadership Council. So I've seen parent organization and parent leadership at every level. And so we, the parents, really came out of the fact that all my children graduated. So I have 14 children that went through that process, and now I got grandchildren. And so the real goal was, what I noticed is that when parent leaders graduate, or when their children graduate, they no longer are part of what's going on in education. And so what happens is all that institutional knowledge, all that experience that parents have is now gone. And some of the people that we're dealing with as a parent organization are unions and district administrations. And those unions have that institutional knowledge, because generally we're dealing with people who are in their career. So teachers have 20 and 30-year careers. Administrators have 20 and 30-year careers. And so what happens is parents are starting over, with leadership every 6 or 7 years. And I didn't want to see all the work that we have done in Buffalo have to be started all over again. So we started We the Parents as a way to have an intergenerational conversation to ensure that the generation that's coming behind us is able to build on the foundation we left and not start all over again, making the same mistakes again.
That's dope. That's great. But if it wasn't obvious, this conversation is going to be about education and how it affects in the Black community. I'm not mainly, but we are Black men. But Black men, how does it affect us? The most. You know what I mean? So, but I want to. You are a parent. I'm a parent. And I just want to talk about the parent role in education, and just talk about how to go about it. What's the right steps? How to circumvent things? How to let your voice be heard? Those things in the education system. How do parents improve or get better, or just be along for the ride the best way with your child?
Well, the first thing is to understand that the parent role is the most important role. Matter of fact, if you look at all the data will tell you that where you have active parents, you get better educational outcomes than where you have passive parents. So, no matter how smart the kid is, no matter how good their teachers are, if you don't have active parents in that process, at some point in an education and career, a child can fall through the cracks. So a parent that's on top of their game, as a matter of fact, I was in a meeting with the First Lady Michelle Obama once, and she made this really, what I thought was an interesting point. She said that almost everybody she went to school with, parents had prepared for them to go to college before they were born. You know what I'm saying? And she said that because we were having a conversation, and parents was like, my child is like in 9th and 10th grade, and we already looking at colleges, and we already visiting colleges. And she was like, listen, understand, the people that you competing with, they're preparing for their children to go to college generations in advance. Their parents, their grandparents, their great-grandparents have set aside preparing for their children's future. So understand that if you're serious about what's going on with your child, you planning that process. Really good parents, they are figuring out, where their children need to go to school in elementary. I'm talking about in preschool. I mean, what's the best preschool situation you can put your child in? Let me tell you how important that is. That is so important, because if you don't have your child in the right school in middle school, it's almost impossible for your child to get into a good college. Why is that? Because let's take Buffalo Public Schools, for example. Y'all went to Hutch Tech, y'all went to a good school, so y'all had advanced placement courses in there. But most Buffalo Public High Schools don't even have advanced placement courses. And if you don't take advanced placement courses in elementary school, meaning that if you don't have access to taking algebra in elementary school, you can't take calculus when you get to become a senior, which means you can't get into the top colleges and universities in this country. So what am I saying? I'm saying that parents who understand how the system works, who understand what it takes to ensure that your child get a top quality education, they are tracking that from the time that their child is in preschool to make sure their child's in the right middle school, to make sure their child's in the right high school, to get their child on the best track for the best future possible. Now, that's a hard thing to do in a city like Buffalo. Buffalo is the third poorest city in the country. Most people are not in a position to do that. But that don't change the fact that with the question you asked, that this information is important for them to understand. So those young men and women who want the best outcomes for their children, they need to be on top of it as soon as possible.
I appreciate you, Mr. Radford, going into that direction, because one of the questions that I had, I guess, along the lines of that is, you said it right that we me and Rad went to Martin Luther King School 39 on High Street. Since pre-K, we were able to go to Hush Tech, and we did get a great education. Shout out to Mr. Polano, shout out to Mr. Greco. But my question is, you said it, like, there are not many quote unquote great schools in Buffalo, especially on the elementary level. And I'm going through it. I don't know if Rad, he moved out. He paying a little bit more taxes right now. So shout out to him. He got a little different access. But as far as me, my son, I'm kind of going through it now because he's transitioning from Head Start and he's going into pre-K. And me and my son's mother, she's a school teacher, and she understands sort of what the kind of the good schools around. And it's not easy for everybody to get into it, for everybody to have access to it. So my question is, for that parent out there that wants to get their child into, I don't want to necessarily name those schools, but maybe there's 3 schools that you kind of eye on that's kind of Buffalo public, right? For that grade level. If you can't get into that, like, what do you do? Like, is there a course of action, or do you just say, I'm going to send my child to this school and just, be involved, but let the chips fall where they may? What is the course of action do you have for that parent out there?
I'm gonna say 2 things, right? So the first thing I'm gonna say is just is unfair, but it's the reality. Yeah. Here's what it comes down to: the squeaky wheel get the oil. If you a parent and you serious about your child, and you go and you make noise about the fact that you want your child in a top performing school, and you are supporting your child, you making sure your child have what they need to be able to compete and do the work. Trust me, they don't want everybody trying to get into these few good schools. So with the ones who squeak the loudest, their kids get in. I'm just being real with you. What does that look like? That looks like when your child is in the 5th or 6th grade, there's in every school building, they have a tracking, they know, what the good class is, what the good teacher is. And if you go into school at the end of the school year and say, make sure my child is in this class next year, you tracking every step of the way where your child go. The word get around and it goes and it gets to the high school folk and they make sure your children get in. So if you squeaking, the people knowing you will get that. The second thing is, if some people don't want to be all up in people's face. They don't want to be squeaking. They kind of want to be a little bit more passive. You can do the work at home. If you are doing really good work at home and you helping your children at home and your children are a top performing student, the school itself will make sure your child is tracked to the best programs and getting to the best school. So one way or the other is really on you as a parent to make sure your child gets the best opportunity possible.
Right. I know you about to get a question. Because I heard you say that, right? That the number one thing for a child education is the parent. And truthfully, I'm not personally pushing against that because I know that to be true, right? Shout out to my parents, Jacob and Audrey Harris, amazing people. And you know what I mean? I see it in my friend's life, and I see the other side of it in some of our friends' life who may not have that stability, right? We see it all. So, but my question is, because we're talking about, good schools and things of that nature, it's on the parent. But the reality is, let's just be honest. There's a lot of lacking parents. Just say in the neighborhoods that we live in. I mean, just to be honest, I mean, we can go into a lot of things. Those things are on our blacklist about, the prison industrial complex and, about how black males are in prison. They're not taking care of their children because they're, the whole gamut, right? There are so many things that's going on. Poverty, single parent households, working multiple jobs, the whole gamut. So my twofold question. I don't want to just throw everything at you, but to that parent, that is, have to take care of a lot of things, that single mother, is there a course of action that she can she may not be able to be at everything physically, but she can stay abreast on her child and be able to, go to work, but also, figure out some things to take care of that child? I'll throw that question to you first. And single fathers out there too, by the way.
Yeah, but there's no question about that. First of all, you hitting the nail on the head because 70% of Buffalo public school students come from single parent households. Wow. That's just a reality, and that's just what it comes down to. So you're right. But let's be real with it. You know what I'm saying? We come from a history where people were in single parent household, and people also didn't even have an 8th grade education. People didn't even go to high school in some situations, but they stayed on top of their children. You can hold your children to a standard no matter whether you're a single parent or no matter whether you ain't got an education yourself. You can have an expectation of your child that you're going to go to school. I'm checking, because if you want something to be, people respect what you inspect. If a parent is checking on what their child is doing, and then they following up, then they getting them the other support they need, that's what it's going to come down to. I mean, there's no way around it. You can't say that, listen, you a single parent and you may be a young parent, and so you got other priorities. You want to go out there and get you a life. You ain't going to prioritize, your child getting an education. If you're in a situation where that's your life, the reality is, unless your child is really hungry on their own, or here's the other thing, here's a way to get through if you just in that situation. One of the most effective things a parent can do is be part of a group. See, you can't do this on your own. So when you're part of a group, whether that's a parent organization, a church organization, a community organization, a club, a fraternity, sorority, if you're part of a group, then it all don't fall on you as an individual parent. Other parents kind of, I've seen single mothers work together as a group to make sure all their kids get where they need to go, get what they need to get. What one parent can't do, another parent can do. So what I would say, find a group of people of like mind who are committed to their children getting better outcomes. If they want a better life for their children than they have for themselves, they will commit to doing what it takes. And if you're not willing to do that, then it's just a matter of luck. I'm just being real. All you're doing is increasing your odds by committing as a parent. If you don't want to increase your odds, you just, it's just the child may come across a good teacher. They may come across a good situation. They may come across a good friend, but all that's just a matter of chance. That's just luck at that point.
All right, so that was great, and we hit on the parents and what parents can do, but it's another step to this, and it's the teachers, right? And how teachers affect kids, far as majority of them are white women, how they affect on Black males, like all these different things that the teachers I guess now I'm gonna say lack, but yeah, lack in helping our community. So what are the biggest issues that in the school that is happening that is affecting our community?
Okay, so you really talking about important stuff. Now, as a parent advocate, one of the major challenges we have, as far as I'm concerned, is the Buffalo Teachers Federation, the teachers union, right? But the way we've been talking about this right up until this point is really about how can parents be empowered to do things for themselves to get better outcomes. But even when you are empowered, you're going to come against the resistance of people looking out for their own interests. So, for example, like you said, the reality in Buffalo Public Schools is that, 70% of all Buffalo Public School teachers don't live in the district that they teach in. They live in the suburbs. 90% of those teachers are white female teachers. You know what I'm saying? So the reality is you have a cultural disconnect between the students and the teachers. So you have an urban suburban divide. The teacher's reality is different than that of the student. So the context in which they teach is not relative. It don't relate to the reality of the child. So if they can't translate, or if the child can't translate, you already at a disadvantage. Again, so if you're expecting the problem to solve itself, because the teachers don't have skin in the game in the sense of these are not their children. So if the children don't get educated, the children, like for example, right now in Buffalo Public Schools, 75% of the kids cannot read on grade level. 80% of the kids cannot do math on grade level. You know what I'm saying? So now that's an improvement where it was 5 years ago, because 5 years ago was 11% who could read on grade level and 8% that could do math on grade level, right? But those numbers are atrocious. But we have one of the best teachers contracts in the country. We pay our teachers very well, and they have great job security, and they have no motivation to get better results, because independent of the outcomes, they get paid. They get job security. And so again, it becomes now, what are parents going to do to organize to protect their interests? Whatever parents is. So if you go back and you look at the years of organizing, what we did through the Buffalo Local Action Committee and the District Parent Coordinating Council, we were fighting those issues to make sure that A, our kids didn't get caught up in those disadvantages, but B, all kids didn't get caught up in those disadvantages. But here's the point. They were fights. If parents don't get together in groups and resist people meeting their interests at the expense of the parents' interests. Because here's how this works. I'm gonna tell you in this language. If you don't have a seat at the table, you on the menu. That means if you ain't got a seat at the table, the people at the table is divvying up based on based on your interests. So you got to make sure you have parent leadership at the table saying what the curriculum should look like, saying what's going on with the suspension policy, what's going on with the after school summer school program. If you're sitting at home thinking that you ain't got to have no leadership at the table negotiating what's happening with your children, they're going to negotiate in their interest and they're going to sacrifice your children. So it's just like anything else. If you don't have representatives of your parent group, if you can't be a representative, it's just like any union. If you can't be a representative, make sure you support a representative. Because if you don't support somebody representing your side of the issue, parents will lose. And in cities like Buffalo, large urban school districts, in small clusters, you've seen parents, resist that and have success. But by and large, you look at large school districts, parents' voices muted, and essentially the students are taken advantage of and exploited.
So my question is to you, Brother Radford. And you organizing, right? All my life, I've known you to be an organizer. All my life. And so, who is helping the parents kind of push their agenda? And what I mean by that is, I believe you. I think you had an interview with a council member. Was it Rashid Wyatt? Was that wasn't too long ago? Not too long since. And I'll say I am privy to certain council. I may know certain councilmen, and I may rub shoulders with just a few people. But my question is, if the Teachers Federation is somewhat of the problem, right? We understand unions. That's been a thing for centuries. That's not a new thing. What is being done around the edges as far as in a political realm? Because I know you've been in certain meetings, right? I know you go to council meetings. They're visible. All you got to do is go on Facebook. You see it. So are they helping you? Is it is the school board help? What is that connection between the political realm and the teachers, we the parents and things of that nature? Is there a connection?
There is a huge connection. And let me just say this. Let me give this answer in two parts, right? And I'm going to slow this down because I want to really communicate something. There is an answer, but I think based on the social justice movement we saw this summer, that means there was one answer for my generation. I think there's a new answer that's evolving for your generation, right? Wow. So let me say, in our generation, in a lot of ways, we were happy to get a Black teacher and a Black superintendent and a Black school board members. We were happy to have Black representation at the table. And we didn't necessarily hold them accountable. We was not uncomfortable. We became uncomfortable holding Black people in those positions accountable the same way we did when white people was in those positions, right? So yeah, we have seats at those tables. We are part of that process. And we have, matter of fact, if you go to the city of Buffalo, in every category of government, we have Black leadership. Absolutely. We have a Black mayor, we have a Black police chief, we have a Black superintendent, we have a Black police commissioner, we have a Black comptroller, we have a Black president of the city council, we have a black president of the Erie County legislature, we have a Black a majority leader of the state legislature. I mean, we literally have a Black, the state legislature, state senate has a Black leader, the state assembly has a Black leader. I mean, there is Black leadership pervasive. I mean, we even have a Black chief city court judge. Yeah. I mean, every position possible. And all these are people I know on a personal level and rub shoulders with in a real way. Now, the question is all that Blackness translated into better outcomes for our children? And the answer is, by and large, no, right? So what am I saying to your generation, right? Your generation, based on the social justice movement, our generation was happy to get Black people in those positions, right? Now we have to move to the next level and say, now if we can get you in that position, it only has value to us if it changes our reality, if it makes things better for us. If we get you in a position and the only person that helps is you, that don't benefit the larger community. We happy because we got somebody, a superintendent that get paid $300,000 a year. That's great. You know what I'm saying? He get paid $300,000 a year. But if you're not getting better educational outcomes, what difference do it make? How they helping our community? So here's what I'm saying to your generation. Your generation is at the most critical point, as far as I'm concerned, in American history. I mean, and that's a big statement to make, and I'm not making it lightly. When I say the most critical point, if your generation don't understand the significance of what took place on January 6th in this country, you are asleep. So hopefully I can say something in this next 30 seconds to stimulate something in you to wake up. There was a time in American history in 1865, after the American Emancipation Proclamation, where we went from 1% of our Black people were literate to over the next, between 1865 and 1900, we went to 70% literacy rate. We went to that rate because churches and community groups got together and they made sure our kids can read, and we took responsibility for our own education, right? But here's what's the bigger happened. We had Black elected officials all across the country at that time. If you go to the South Carolina State Legislature and you look at between 1865 and 1880, the majority of the South Carolina Legislature was Black, right? But here's why this is critical to understand for your generation. By 1900, after we had the Hayes-Tilden Compromise, where Rutherford B. Hayes became, even though Tilden won the election, he was a New York governor who won the election, they had the Hayes-Tilden Compromise, and Rutherford B. Hayes agreed to take the troops out of the South and really allow for the Jim Crow laws to take over. When the Jim Crow laws took over, we went from having Black elected officials pervasive in this country to by 1900, we had none. And when they had all those Black people in power, nobody perceived that it can come a day where you can have none. What I'm telling you is we didn't have a Black president. We had all these Black elected officials. On January 6th, the whole idea of the white supremacist mindset made it clear that it wants to survive in America. And if your generation sits back and assumes that because we got Black elected officials and people in power, and if they're not doing and they're not doing anything to make our community better and stronger, we can end up going back 50 years. As a matter of fact, if you pay attention to what's going on in Georgia right now, there are 250 laws in 46 states to suppress the right of African Americans to vote right now in your generation. And if your generation is not paying attention, you're going to look up and they're going to literally take back all the gains of the previous generation, which they have historically done before. But when I talk to millennials and I talk to Generation Z folks, they're like, oh, that can't happen. Oh, that can't happen. I'm saying, do you know history? It has already happened. People are committed to white supremacy. People really believe that because you are white, that makes you better. And they actually have law. If you're gonna look at the picture of when they signed the voting laws in Georgia, it was 7 white males, you know what I'm saying, in the room who were trying to set back all the progress that had just been made with record numbers of people to vote. What am I saying to your generation? Listen, don't go to sleep right now. Right now, y'all have to be focused like never before on how y'all build on the foundation of what has come before y'all. And y'all have to have clear goals about how we want our community to improve and hold people accountable to that. Because if you sit back and just gonna expect it to happen by yourself, you're gonna look up in the 1900 and 2050 is gonna look like 1900 in this community.
Wow, that's crazy, and you feel that, right? Because I mean, I think without being said that we're going to look back, 2020 is going to be a linchpin. It's going to be whether it's good or bad for whatever, but it's going to be a time in history where things shifted in some way, right? Sam hinted on it earlier, the school to prison pipeline, and how that affected, the Black men in America, and just how it just damaged how, it affects us. So my question to you is, how do we circumvent that? What are ways to circumvent that? What are ways, the Black men, mentors or people like us that escape that can help, that whole system, or just what's our other ways to help that?
Well, I want y'all to remember this. When we passed the mass incarceration law of the 90s, it was Black people at the table. You know what I'm saying? But what was happening was not people there challenging the impact it was going to have on our community and willing to fight for that. We got almost caught up in a class system. Black people who were able to succeed got in a position where they considered themselves like white people, right? And they didn't get focused on the needs of the whole community. They didn't measure our success based on what was going on in our community. So we now came up with these draconian, laws, that led to mass incarceration. You can read the New Jim Crow by Miss Alexander, and you can get a lot of that history. But here's the point. The point is, we have to be willing today more than ever, and not just willing, we have to be committed more than ever to look out for the interests of all of our children. What does that look like in practical terms? The school to prison pipeline is set up based on a system and legislation. And this may not be a popular thing to say right now, but I'm telling you, my commitment to children is why I'm going to say it. There are three things going on right now that gives you the indication that what's going to happen over the next 50 years is going to impact our community differently than it's going to impact everybody else's community. Right now, we have the legalization of drugs, the legalization of prostitution, and we already have the legalization of gambling, right? These are things that deteriorate. These are moral things that deteriorate, and they strike at the core of the community and the family, right? We are leading the conversation about that. You know what I'm saying? Because of its impact on our community. It's not a popular thing to talk about because people want those things legalized because they are ways that people can benefit from it. But if you go to every state where drugs have been legalized, you will see that it has increased the usage among our youth and it has decreased our academic outcomes. Wow. It has not done anything good for our community. But you will see leaders in our community touting how important this is, how significant it is. You know what I'm saying? Now, I hear that side of the argument, but somebody has to look at that and go do an analysis in your generation and say, what does this look like 30 years from now? What does it look like? You know, and kind of go look at places and look and track. And here's the most important part. They have to care. They have to care about how is this going to impact my child? What is the world going to look like for my child? And if you care, then you have to weigh in a conversation and do what's in the best interest of your future. People who do that have better outcomes. People who don't, it's just a game. Life is a game of chance for them.
I do appreciate you going to that because I was going to ask you that question about the legalization of marijuana. I was going to ask that, but you kind of went there, and I just want to leave it there because that is a whole separate conversation. But I did want to ask you this. Because we know, and you talked about it earlier, it takes a village, right? We understand that premise. I know it's a cliche that we use, but it's the truth. It does take a village to raise a child. Like, you cannot do it on your own. And like you alluded to it, how the involvement of faith-based communities and just plainly church was so influential and so, critical to the child development and education, right? And I see it, me growing up in church, being a preacher, I see it firsthand. I know at my church, my pastor, he always tells that our graduation rate is 99%. I don't want to make a joke right there, but I did want to say shout out to the 1%. But anyways, 99%, because we made that's neither here nor there. That's neither here nor there. You know. But my question is, how do you think the role of church has diminished in that regard? Is it because we talk about it on our show? Is it like a lack of faith in the institution, quote unquote? Or is it the church just having a hands-off mentality? Because let me say this. I don't like to use broad strokes of the church because people say the church may not be doing anything, but I'll say my church is. I can't speak on everything, right? So, but that's another story. That's how my question is that, like, how do you feel about the involvement of church? Why has it may have diminished, and what can we do to kind of turn that tide?
So the people who say the church is not doing anything, I want them to imagine a world without the church. Just think about what it would like if they're doing nothing. Imagine what it would be without it. Terrible. The church has been the institution that has stabilized the Black community. I'm talking about right from through enslavement, out of enslavement, through Jim Crow, through the Black Power movement to the modern day. Without a church as an institution, I can't even tell you where we be as a community. It was just a really great documentary. I can't call the name of the doctor who just did it, but it's a great documentary on PBS that was talking about the history of the Black church. It's really important for people to understand the significant contribution as an institution that it makes. What has happened, though, is that the church is really the people in the church. We can't get preoccupied with buildings. The church is made up of the people who make up the institution. And so I think it was Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Nkrumah, who made the point, Kwame Ture, who made the point that you can't judge Christianity by Christians, right? What is the point he's making? People are in the developmental process in their own spiritual development. You can't judge the whole thing. You should judge Christianity by Christ. Christ should be the example in which you judge if you're a Christian and you believe in that. Why am I saying that? We have a generation of people who don't understand the value of the institution because they're getting caught up with what they see the people within the institution do. And they don't understand the significance of how this institution literally, it's scripture that talk about religion is what we do for our widows and orphans. Our modern day widow and orphan is a single parent. That's what, in effect, that's what it is. It's a person that don't have another parent there. And to the extent that we as a community come out as a collective and we meet the needs of them. See, right now, I think your generation has accepted the idea of single parenting. Wow. It's just a matter of it's just the way it is. It's just a normal function. If you're talking about long as it take a man and woman to make a baby, you're going to need institutions that support the relationship between men and women to raise children. That's just the reality of nature. And so what I'm suggesting is that the church is going to be a critical role. I think it's going to have more of a role. Your generation is very different from my generation. In my generation, the church was a normal part of what's going on. I've been a teacher, and I remember when as a 7th and 8th grade math teacher, meeting kids who had never been to church. That just wouldn't have happened in my generation. In your generation, you have to deal with the fact that people don't have a spiritual grounding. They don't believe in a higher power. And therefore, it makes it much easier for them to take risks that they would not take if they believed in something larger than themselves.
Okay. You got something, right?
You can go. You can go.
Okay.
You can go.
Okay. Okay. Let me ask you this. We try to be as politically correct as we can. And we just talked about church, and I want to say we do love everybody, right? We do love everybody, but I did want to ask this because there's a contention out there. I mean, just to be plain and simple, there's a contention out there because the truth is that school education is not church, right? And what I mean by that is morality has gone. I mean, it's changing right now. The morality is changing in every different, facet of life. So my question is to the parent out there, right? To the parent that is, I just want to be, that is seeing certain things happening in the education spaces that may or not fit with their morality, so to speak. I don't know. Do you see where I'm going with that?
Exactly.
Okay. So I is there a course of action for that? Like, because I not yes. Okay, just answer yes.
Not only is there a course of action, is a critical course of action for that.
Okay.
Here's what you got to understand. It is important, even in a politically correct situation, for there to be a place for everybody.
Absolutely.
So that means if you can't give up your seat at the table because other people get a seat at the table, you have to make a space that reflective of what your needs are. So this has already been going on historically. What do you think happened when Black people and white people started going to school together? They integrated. Initially, white people took their kids out of those schools. They put their kids in a Catholic school. Because their value system said that, this don't work for me having these integrated schools. You know what I'm saying? They met their need. And then what happens when people start to make a little bit more money than the people who didn't have money? They put their children, they went to the suburbs. They go to the suburbs. 90% of the reason is because of the school situation. They want to have a better education offering for their children. So if you need to create an educational setting that meets the needs of your value system, you are responsible for doing that. You can't just take what's given to you. You have to say, here's my value system. I'm not judging nobody else's value system, but this is one that's mine. So I can create an educational system that reflects that. And whether that's in a public school, a charter school, a private school, a home school, as a parent, you are fundamentally responsible for the educational outcomes of your children. And every parent is right when it comes to their child. Ain't no parent have a right to tell another parent, oh, no, the school should teach my child this, and it should teach your child, and another parent, it should teach their child, or it should teach all children this. If we don't all have the exact same value system, I don't think there can be an expectation on the school system to meet everybody's value system, unless we get to the place where we say the only thing we want school to teach is reading, writing, and arithmetic. And that's all we want them to teach. But if anything crosses outside of that, preparing a child with the skills they need to function in society, the minute we cross into value systems and morals and that kind of thing, if that becomes part of the conversation, I have a responsibility as a parent to protect the interests of my children and my family and my value system. And I think every parent should have that right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's
All right,
well
that's
said.
good.
No said.
All right, because at first I wasn't sure, but now I understand exactly what's going on here.
Yes.
But so I want to talk about like dropouts. You know, the dropout rate, how it affects our community, and I know you was a part of an organization that was trying to help that. So I just want to know your course of action when it comes to dropouts, and how can we help the community with that.
Is another great question. So first of all, again, that when I was working with trying to bring a school here that was focused strictly on dealing with children who are dropped out. But here, what I'm going to tell you right now, all of that has changed because of the pandemic. The reality is there are probably even more kids dropped out. It's about 15 to 20% of Buffalo Public School children who have dropped out of school, right?
Wow.
So the dropout rate is just ridiculously high. People who are not graduating from high school, starting high school and not graduating. But here's what's changed as a result of the pandemic. As a result of the pandemic, we see that every child does not need to go sit in the classroom for 6 or 7 hours in front of a teacher to get an education. That's just not the reality of the world we live in anymore. We have actually made the paradigm shift to where there are at least 3 different ways that you can educate a child based on the needs of the child. The first thing is that we can have a child, if a child can self-pace, self-learn, they are able, based on their parents, their relationship, to the information, they're able to work remotely without going to school. There's no reason for a child to go sit in the classroom. How do we know? There are children who excel in remote learning. I was just in a forum with some kids, and the child said, the best thing that ever happened to me was remote learning, because I don't have to deal with school. I don't deal with all that, all the stuff that happened in the lunchroom and the hallways and all the social issues. I don't have none of those distractions. I can focus on my schoolwork and get my schoolwork done. And she said I accelerated. She said, when I go to school, I have to deal with so many other things. I can't even focus in classroom. When I come home, I'm dealing with the effect of all the drama I'm dealing with in school. She said, the elimination of drama has led to me academically shooting up. And it's a group of kids, 10 to 15% of the kids who have found a way to excel in remote learning. There's another group of kids who excel in hybrid learning. They say, I need to go to school when I need help, right? But if I don't need help, let me just do it at home. Let me go to school when I need to go to school. You know what I'm saying? And they get the hybrid learner, or they can log on remotely and say when they need to, and you can have a self-paced process. Then you have those kids who need to go sit down in front of a teacher and be helped by a teacher. All 3 of those methods now are available to kids and parents to track their children's learning. And so I think when we come out of this, children who would have dropped out, because there's a lot of reasons why kids drop out, a lot of reasons. Some of them can be mitigated with giving a child the best option on how to educate them. They don't necessarily have to be in the building. They can be in the building part-time. They can be in the building all the time. But once you come up with a process of meeting the child where they're at, giving them what they need, and holding them and their parents responsible for plotting a path to whatever their post-secondary experience is going to be. Because we at a place in this country where everybody don't necessarily need to go to college. Everybody don't need to graduate from a college. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you can get a child into their craft, into their skill, the thing they want to do in high school and earlier, you can get them on a track right now to where they can produce, educationally and produce in the marketplace independent of credentialing that you normally go through the school process for.
I'm glad you went there. Talking about the pandemic. I'm glad, because that was really where I wanted to go. Because like looking at this, and even some of my nieces and some people that are like going through this as far as, being in high school or grammar school, this has been something I have personally never seen in my life. I mean, I guess nobody has ever seen it, so to speak. As far as having the option to hybrid learn, having the option to not even go in and to be like, it's mind-boggling. And one I want to know, what are sort of a few things, maybe 1 or 2 things that have come up because of this, maybe good or bad. Like 1 or 2, like a couple of things that like okay, we see this has came out of this. That may have been good, but this has shown us a glaring hole in what we have been doing. Like that. And then I have another question on the backside of that.
Okay, so you're right. All this has not been all good. Most of it's been actually bad. I mean, the lack of socialization has led to higher suicides, depression, the mental health situations going on with our children. In that same forum I was in with the youth, I mean, you would not believe what happened to some kids because they could not go to school. They were from single parent households. They were at the home by themselves. Their parent had to work, and I mean, there are so many negative things that came out of this situation. You got to understand that in a city like Buffalo, third poorest city in the country, second highest child poverty rate in the country, and you seeing the children were already behind. You know, like I said, 80% of the kids can't do math on grade level, 75% can't read on grade level. Now they out of school for a year. For almost from March when they went out of school to November, the pre-K through the second grades didn't even have a device. We didn't make sure all the kids had a device. And if you understand anything about education, between pre-K and second grade is where you learn to read. And then third grade on, you read to learn. So if you can't learn to read, if you lose pace learning to read, it affects your ability to read and learn going forward. And for poor people in Buffalo in particular, it has been a major setback. And what I mean by that, because if you go look at in the private schools, every private school opened up in September, and they opened up for 5 days a week. So their children tracking at the same pace, while our children don't even all have a device. They all don't have internet connection. They falling further behind. Their parents are not equipped to help them the same way. The private and the suburban school kids were all back in hybrid learning by October. So our school Buffalo Public School was the last school in the state to open up. We opened up in February. We were the last school in the whole state to do that. So what am I saying? I am saying that it is potentially a situation where if we don't have strong parent and community leadership come up advocating and fighting on behalf of our children, this will be a turning point to where things will actually get worse in Buffalo. The hope is that, we've been out here advocating. We, the parents, is out here working with people like the District Parent Coordinating Council and MVP, the Urban Think Tank. A lot of people are committed to it getting better. But if the average everyday parent, having sat at home with their child for the last year, watching where their child was at, right, don't get inspired and motivated to make a difference for their child, it is not going to get better by itself. I assure you that it's going to get worse before it get better.
Absolutely. And I had a follow-up question to that, because I want to know. I know they're going back to school. I have a lot of people I know who's in a part of the school system. A lot of people, and a lot of them happen to be in higher education, right? Teachers, principals. And so, I'm hearing complaints from all sides of it. But knowing that we're going back into school, if that is correct, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that come September, the idea is they want everybody to go back into school. Is that correct or no?
Most people will be back in school before September. Once the vaccinations go, the teachers are at the front of the line, and now everybody under 30 can get. Now, matter of fact, I think next month everybody will be able to get that vaccination. So what they did is they just passed what's called the American Rescue Plan Act, which basically gave you all the money. Buffalo got $245 million extra dollars to be able to mitigate because of the impact of the pandemic, which means we all have money to have kids in school during the summer. We have money to have kids in after school. We have money for kids to do all kinds of supports. Now, do that mean that's going to automatically happen? No, because the teacher can say, well, listen, we still don't want to teach in the summer. We want to have our summer off. And even though our kids are behind and they need more work, we don't want to work it. You know what I'm saying? So if we don't make a demand to say, no, listen, our kids were the last one to come to school. Our kids need to be in school in this summer. And because you had the longest time off, you need to be in the school this summer teaching them. It's not going to happen by itself. There has to be a push to make it happen. So hopefully we will be back in school all of us will be back in school before September. So by the time we get to September, we should be in a position where we're getting back to close to normal as possible. And when I say that, I'm saying that with a grain of salt, because we can't go back to the way it was, because the way it wasn't working. So we have to now come back better than we were before. We have to come back and say, okay, how do we integrate this hybrid? How do we integrate this remote? How do we eliminate suspension? Because there's no reason to suspend a child from academic learning anymore. because the child can always get learning no matter where they at. There's no reason to have snow days anymore. There's no reason to have, if a child is sick and I mean, unless they just can't get up and think, there's no reason for people to lose academic instruction time anymore because we got techniques and training experience and education experience to change all that. So we have to be part of the discussion about how we are changing education to meet the needs of all of our children and not go back to the way it was.
Okay. I know. We come up on an hour, and we try to keep this concise. But I do have I do got a little follow up, because Mr. Radford, great man, right? And we understand that dynamic. We talked about the dynamic between the parents and politics, but I want to talk specifically about the school board, right? And really, I this is not a salacious podcast, but I do want to bring this up for context, just for the people can understand this. And Dr. Cash, right? Because I was talking to Rad a couple weeks, maybe some months ago, and we were talking about basketball and the whole dynamic of I have, I seen a couple basketball games online from the suburban schools, like they had their camera set up, the whole nine. And Rad brought up, how you and his brother, and I seen it on the news, a list of whole people are on Olive talking about this, how the Buffalo Public Schools should, at least if y'all not going to allow parents to come, which they should have, that's another story for another day, then you should at least have the technology to be able to show it on YouTube. And then I seen the school board meeting where Dr. Cash addressed it and said that they had it, and I never seen it. I looked high and low. I searched YouTube, Facebook, any other thing that I just couldn't see it. I didn't see it on the website. I don't know if some school, I didn't know where it was at. Maybe it was, and it was somewhere hidden in a deep, dark, secret, but I couldn't see it. And that's just one thing. That's one example, everybody. But my question is the relation between you and the school board, right? I don't know whether it's adversarial or not. I'm not sure. But just, can you speak to that point? How he blatantly did not tell the accurate truth. I mean, he just didn't, because it just wasn't, it didn't exist. Can you talk about that?
And let me separate the school board from the Buffalo Public Schools Administration, because people don't understand that there's a difference. So the Buffalo Public Schools Administration is the superintendent and his staff. The school board only has one employee. They hire the superintendent, and then the superintendent hires everybody else, right? So the school board is our elected officials.
Gotcha.
So listen, I'm gonna keep it real with you. Keep it all 100. This is there is nothing personal between we the parents, the DPCC and the school board of superintendent. It's none of it personal. We only fight on issues. We like all the people. We respect all the people. We disagree on the issues. I mean, so at the end of the day, we're measuring outcomes. And I don't care who you are. I like you on a personal level. But if you're not getting good outcomes, I'm calling that out. I'm not going to be saying, well, it's because, that's my man and everything. I'm going to pretend like everything is all right, even though he don't live here. He going back to Martha's Vineyard when he leave. My kids live here. My family live here. My grandkids live here. I needed to get better. So I'm in this sport to get better, and it ain't personal. If you take it personal, that's on you. Because I don't take nothing you do personal. I see you hired to do a job. Either you do it or you don't. When you don't do it, we call you out on it. Here's what it comes down to. Take a city like Buffalo, that issue in particular, where where Emmanuel and some other people got together to focus on this issue of the coaches. We have been working on this issue for at least 10 years on this coaches, because Buffalo Public Schools is the only school district in all of New York State where you get to be a coach as a certified teacher and you don't have to be a certified coach. So we hire people as coaches because they are teachers. Teachers get if you have a certified coach and a certified teacher, a teacher with seniority, if the Buffalo Bills coach wanted to come coach in the Buffalo Public Schools, a science teacher who never played the sport or taught the sport, will have the option for the job over the coach. That is just don't make no sense, no kind of way. It leads to an underdevelopment of our student athletes. It leads to us not being able to get scholarships, like other cities are able to do, and we need to fight against it. But what has happened is the superintendent, the school board, they have compromised. Our whole school board is endorsed by the Buffalo Teachers Federation. The Buffalo Teachers Federation, we tried an action to negotiate with them to change that. They said, here's what we are willing to give you. Because every coach gets a $7,000 stipend, we want our teachers to get those stipends. If your coaches are willing to volunteer and let our our teacher get the stipend for advising them, that means physically be there, we're willing to cut that deal.
Wow. That's
So we
great.
saying, so this is just a money thing for you. You don't care if our kids can learn the sport. You don't care, I mean, how important the sport is for our children in terms of scholarships and opportunities. You don't care about none of that. They said, we care, you know what I'm saying, as long as we the coach and we get that $7,000 stipend. And so they said, our teachers have student loans and stuff. The people from the community, they may not be in that situation. And they know they're not in that situation because they know most of them didn't graduate. And so therefore, they're not likely to be in a position where they got student loans. So the reality is we as a community have to fight until that changes. There are a lot of things we fought for until it changed. And I'm glad to see that this generation, I'm glad to see that Emmanuel and the Coaches Coalition and those other people who continue to care about that issue are going to continue to fight that until that changes.
Absolutely. Right.
That was good. That was good. I mean, I'm out of questions. I think we hit all the ones that we wanted to hit. Do you got another one? You want to keep going? I feel like this is a lot for it was for everybody, but you enjoyed it a lot. You got another question, Sam, that you wanted to?
I'll say this. I 1000% enjoyed this a lot. I mean, this is the man of the year. You know what I'm saying? This is the man of the year. But seriously, I do want to say this. I do want to say, and I want to give Mr. Radford the floor to say some things. But I do want to say this. We care about everybody, as he stated. Right? It's just we're measuring the outcome. That's all what it is. And this is not an indictment on teachers, so to speak. You know what I mean? We're not coming at you. We're not necessarily coming at, administration, so to speak. But we're just calling a spade a spade. We saying it, we telling it like it is. And we talked about the role of the parents as well. What we tried to do with this podcast to be all encompassing, because just in the interest of full disclosure, we said to ourselves, because we knew the Black Lives was coming up, we wanted to talk about education. So my question was, who do we get? Like, what side are we going to get? But I believe that this was the best choice because it was all encompassing. It held no punches for anybody. And Mr. Radford, if you can, a couple things I want you to do. Obviously, you can tell the people where they can see all of your content and everything that you're doing. That's number one. But also, if you can just drop in like certain things that we should be looking at as parents, as far as the education thing, like certain, maybe there are, the school board meetings, like where could we watch those at? Or maybe there are certain websites or certain like bulletin boards where after school programs, or, certain things that you are privy to that I may not be. Or general public may not be. If you can like throw that on the end, certain things that we need to be kind of pay attention and watching at as the next few months is happening, you can throw that in there as well.
Okay, so here's probably, I'll give those sites that you can go to get information from first. Let me tell you the thing you need to be paying attention to right now. One of the things that in our community in particular, we don't pay attention to legislation until after it's passed and we are affected by it. We don't pay attention to legislation when it's proposed. When it's the time you're supposed to push back on it, right? So right now there's a piece of legislation that's being promoted by Majority Leader Crystal Stokes, where she is calling for a moratorium on charter schools in Buffalo for the next 3 years. Only Buffalo. Everywhere else in New York State can have more charter schools. Only Buffalo, she want a moratorium on them. That's because the teachers union want that. So
I think I'm sorry, Maritime just got closed down, right? Not Maritime, Westminster, right? I believe something just got
Westminster and Enterprise.
Enterprise. Okay.
Right. One second. So what Westminster Charter School just got closed down?
Oh, they're not being a charter no more.
Oh, they lost their charter.
So as of yesterday, their vote was to not extend their charter. So as of June, Westminster Charter School and Enterprise Charter School is supposed to shut down. Now, that's the vote that has happened, right? So here again, let me make the point. So just like there's a legislation proposed to put a moratorium on all new charter schools in Buffalo for the next 3 years. See, that's a flex move by the teachers union with the school board that they control to get the teachers. Right now, kids come out of the pandemic. They don't want parents having a choice on when they send their kids to. They want you to be forced to send your kids to the Buffalo public schools, right? Now, because think about this. They closed Westminster and Maritime because they said that, not Maritime, Westminster and Enterprise, because they said their reading and math scores was too low. I think they had a 23 and an 18 reading score and like a 20 and a 17, something like that math score. But both of them, all of their scores was below Buffalo Public Schools, right? But here's what the deal is. There are 25 Buffalo Public Schools that have worse reading scores than Enterprise and Westminster. There's 24 Buffalo Public Schools that have worse reading and math scores than Enterprise and Westminster. So when you take those children out of those schools that you finna shut down, where you sending them to? Send them to another school that's doing the same thing the school they're in. So what sense does that make? You're gonna take kids, 1,000 kids, and you're gonna spread them all to all different situations. Some of these kids been going to school together since kindergarten. Just a social impact of having to go to a new school if you are not getting better outcomes. If you're now taking them out and you guaranteeing everyone is going to go to a better school, that may be a conversation worth having. But you can't guarantee that because you don't have enough better schools. So the reality is this is just a power move. Yeah. So if we as a community don't come together and say, hold up, stop, there's no way you're going to force us to shut down a school that's doing the same as your school and send them to a worse school. That just don't make sense. And then you're going to now have the legislators pass a piece of legislation that limits our ability to have choices. Everybody else, if you got the money, you got the choice. You can go to the suburbs, you can go to a private school, you go wherever you want to go to get a good education. Poor people don't have that option. Low-income people don't have that option. They have to go to their public school. So now, if you got charter schools, the average rate of reading rate in all charter schools is double that of Buffalo Public Schools. The math rate is double that of Buffalo Public Schools. Why would we limit our choices only for Buffalo? New York City, we ain't gonna limit their choices. Rochester, we're not gonna limit their choices. Syracuse, Albany, just Buffalo. Money. Why? Because they're confident. They're confident. The Buffalo Public Teachers Association got that kind of power, but they're confident that we're not going to be able to mobilize enough parents to give pushback on it. Wow. They know that the parents in Buffalo, by and large, are low income, and they are focused on their life and surviving, paying the bills, sending their kids, living everyday life. They don't have time to be paying attention to legislation and fight back on legislation. So what am I saying? For people who can pay attention and can offer something to this kind of conversation, please stand up and push back so that we do it for all of us, for everybody in our community. So here's the ways you can push back in the short term. The We the Parents Show is on every Saturday morning from 10 to 11 o'clock on WUFO. You can obviously listen there to stay abreast. We also have a podcast. You can go to the We the Parents Show podcast and get the podcast information. You can go to our website. It's www.caowny.org/We the Parents. You can call 332-3773 and you can get and ask for We the Parents, and we will, you could talk to somebody. So those are ways you can contact people. If you want to be part of the representation, you want to be part of an organization that is actually going to represent school district, you can join the District Parent Coordinating Council. They meet every second Tuesday of the month at 6 p.m. You can go to Buffalo DPCC on Facebook, and you can watch it live, or you can participate over. They'll give you a Zoom link. You can participate over Zoom. You can also watch the Buffalo Board of Education meetings. You can go to buffaloschools.org, Buffalo Schools with an S at the end, .org. And when you get to the first page, they'll give you the link to go to the Board of Education meeting. The Board of Education meets the third Wednesday of every month. But if you also can speak at the Board of Education meeting, if you want to speak at the Board of Education meeting, you call 816-3567. That's 816-3567. The Tuesday before the Wednesday board meeting at noon. You have to call before noon. Anytime from one board meeting to the next morning before noon, the Tuesday before the board meeting, you can speak at the board meeting. Those are all ways you can have your voice heard. Those are all ways you can be part of the process. And let me let the last word be that I hope that your generation, I really hope you understand how important the educational paradigm is, how important education is to the future of our community. I hope that y'all don't get caught up where our generation got caught up at go along to get along. We don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to be controversial. We don't want to, call people out. We want to just kind of keep the environment peaceful and collaborative. And at the end of the day, you take that process, and your community and your children do not benefit from that. We end up maintaining the status quo. What I'm praying is that your community, that your generation understand that this is a fight. There's no struggle. There's no progress without struggle. You understand? And on a certain level, we have to put ourselves in a position where we have an unconditional commitment to the betterment of our children and the betterment of our community. And we are responsible. It's nobody else's job to get better outcomes for our children than ours. And in our generation, we thought maybe that somebody else was going to do this for us. We thought somebody was going to come in and save us and save our community. And, we thought getting elected officials was going to make the difference in our community. And I'm telling you, that's not the answer. The answer is on us on a collective level, person to person. We have to work together and we have to unconditionally fight for our children in our community.
For sure. I loved everything you said about that. And I thank you, Dad, for coming on. I thought you was the perfect guest for this because you've been a parent. You've been fighting for education reform my whole entire life. So that's what a lot of people know you for. That's what I know you to do. Also being a great father. So just thank you again for taking out the time and coming on our podcast and doing this for us.
And let me just say thank y'all for inviting me. And I can't tell you how proud I am of y'all. I seen when y'all first started this thing and to see where this thing is at, and see how y'all have really taken it to the next level. I'm so proud of y'all just as a father, as a man in the community who appreciates the work of just y'all network of brothers, or y'all the brotherhood that y'all have put together, that y'all have kept together since high school. That is an example of for the young children that's coming up behind y'all. Y'all built relationships that y'all have kept, and now y'all contributing to make the community better than y'all found it. That's the ultimate thing that any father, elder in the community could ever ask for, to see the men that's coming behind him, picking up that mantle and really, really, committing to making the community better than they found it. So I'm proud of y'all. Y'all keep up the good work. No seatbelt needed.
Yes, sir.